Hello and welcome to Making It Artisan Stories. I'm Linda Marie Colon, and this is our newest episode featuring a fantasy novelist, Ethan A. Rappaport. Hi, Ethan. Welcome
Hello.
to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So you're a resident of Orange, Connecticut.
I am.
And
Been there a long time.
by day, you are a computer programmer. Nice. And tell us how you got started on fantasy novel writing and how you squeeze that into your computer programming career.
So my job took me to New York City, and I had 3 hours on the train each day, and decided I certainly loved reading fantasy, sci-fi as a child. Decided to try since I had some ideas, and as it turned out, I loved writing, and I never knew that, my entire life.
That's excellent. So an excellent use of the commute.
Oh yeah, I mean, before I tried that, I didn't know what to do with all that time.
So how long have you been writing?
I've been writing for 15 years now,
Wow.
and I hope I can keep writing.
So you've gotten started with a 9-novel series.
I did. I started
And if you
writing.
want to just, go through us and show us how the novels kicked off what soon became the comic book
Comics.
writing, and the segue to that. But I see there's 9.
So this is a fantasy series, high fantasy, sword and sorcery style series that I've been writing. And it's a little bit different from other series in that it's not linear. It's laid out, actually, the way the books are presented here, where you could read either in rows or in columns, and the books are related. So if you read these three, they're related, same as these three. But if you read down, they're also related, and I don't think that's been done before.
Yeah, that's a nice shift in the paradigm of just reading series, because if you skip around, you feel like you're lost, but you can also go that way, so it almost doubles the experience
Exactly.
of the reader. So what kind of a following did you glean from your first writings, and do you have a fan base?
Yeah. Certainly like meeting all the fans when they read the books. I love getting the feedback from them. And that's actually what got me started writing this way, because after I wrote the first and second book, the second book doesn't follow the characters. It actually goes back in time to explain the first book.
Okay.
And fans started asking, well, what happens to those characters? We want to know, we like them, what happens to them? So then I figured, well, if I'm writing this way, why not also explain what happens to the characters? And so fans kind of got me started doing this, what I call a matrix, interlocking matrix.
So these are hardcover print versions.
A paperback, paperback print.
Okay, and so they're in print, and then can you also view them on a Kindle, or they don't have digital?
I did have digital. I took them out briefly at the request of my agent. I may put them back. We'll see.
Okay, depending on demand.
Yes.
So from the fantasy novel writing, after how many years did you then segue into comic book writing? We see we have what looks to be urban fantasy, and then you have quite the collection even up here I'm looking at. Or you do them simultaneously?
I do now. Several years after I began writing the novels, I met an artist, Sal Del Greco, at a comic book, at a convention. And he got interested in working with me to bring this first novel to life as a graphic novel. And we've been doing that for several years now, and learning a lot about all the differences between comic books versus novels.
So you went from the fantasy paperback novels to then segueing over to the comic books. And how does that differ? Like I see right here, you have what's called the comic book artboard. Do you want to explain
Yes.
a little bit about the process?
One of the things that surprised me the most about the comic books was how many steps are involved in bringing a comic book to life. So this board here, Sal created, but this is not even the first step. Before this, he would lay out where he wants different characters, different events to happen. Then he would called penciling.
Okay.
Of course, sort of sketch out, erase, keep sketching, and when he was happy with the sketches, he would then ink it. So this is now called inked.
Okay.
And then from the inked print, we would then scan it, bring it digitally, and then start flatting it. That's putting in colors in each section. And then from the flatted colors, you go to the rendered colors, where you put in the highlights and different special effects. And even that's not done because then you have to put in the dialogue boxes.
Right, I was going to say, and then you have all those dialogue bubbles. So what's the timeline? Well, first let's talk about the fantasy novels. How long does something like that take you? And then as far as a comic book and all that's entailed there, because you actually are with a trio, right? You're a 3-person team for the comic books and then solo for the novels?
Yes. So the novels, they were taking me a little bit over a year for each novel. And the comic books are taking Sal and I a long time because we both have full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So after we did the first comic book, which took a couple of years, Sal and I decided to ask Rose Farashi to assist us. So now the 3 of us are working to try to get these out a little bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how do you distribute these, the novels and the books? They're available through the comic conventions that you appear at as well as online?
Yeah, online in the conventions. I go to country fairs, holiday fairs in the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Throughout the state of Connecticut and then some?
Mostly Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes surrounding states, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm. And when's the next fair that we could see you at?
So the next one will be at the Big E, September 14th.
Okay, so we'll see you this fall at the Big E, and you'll have your own table.
So at the Big E, I share a table with other authors, Connecticut authors, in the Connecticut building.
In the Connecticut building. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll come look for you because I'm a regular there.
Great.
And tell us a little bit about segueing from the regular comic book, and then you started another series, which is the urban fantasy. So you've really grown the books and the plots, or are they the same characters that then
So the
transfer over?
So the novels and the graphic novel are high fantasy, but I had ideas for other types of fantasy stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one here, Supervillain, is slightly different. It takes place in New York City in modern times, and it's about a trader who decides he doesn't like what his bosses are doing. They're taking all the credit, so he figures he's going to steal $1 billion from them.
Mm-hmm.
But every time he tries to do something evil, something actually good happens. So as much as he tries to be a supervillain, he just turns out to be a superhero.
Mm-hmm. So is that the common theme throughout the plots, or is this specific to?
That one's a little bit different, but certainly in fantasy, it's usually good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So that's the overarching theme for even the novels, is good versus evil, and then are there subplots, and you get to know each character intimately?
Yeah. Some of the books have lots of different plots, and some of the characters, go from sort of minor to major characters.
Mm-hmm.
And, so a minor bad guy from Forging Paradise becomes the main character anti-hero of the lesser evil. So it's
So
not...
you kind of grow them through the series.
Exactly.
So perhaps in one of the books they have a minor role, and then they get a spotlight role
Exactly.
in the next one.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
a lot of fun. I love delving into each of the different characters and figuring out, how they would act in different situations. And
Mm-hmm. What's behind the thinking? So when you create a character, is it based on gender? Is it based on character traits? And then how do you develop them throughout the story? And then how far ahead do you think? Because you do have a series, so is it hard for you to stretch it out, or as it comes to you?
So I have to plan everything.
Mhm.
I know other authors, like to go with the flow and sort of see where things happen, but I like to plan everything out. So with each of the books, I knew, everything, all the major plot points, what was going to happen. And then as I was writing, I was just trying to figure out how the characters would fit in and what they would do in the different situations. And eventually they, got through the story in a sense.
Mm-hmm. And how long do they get to, last? Are they from beginning to end of the series, or do we lose some characters along the way and there's a lot of plot twists and turns?
Unfortunately, yeah, some of the characters don't make it through.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always sad to see some go, but hopefully it's for a good reason.
Now, these are exciting plots, but do you ever hit a roadblock? Do you ever have a writer's block? Or do they just, once you have pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, does it just flow? Or as a typical writer, do you run into some of the same barriers that sometimes hit all of us?
Oh, every single one of the books, I hit roadblocks and was willing to, almost ready to quit, saying I could never solve, what was happening. But usually I could give it some time, come back to it, and then all of a sudden I would know what to write, and things would flow for a while until I hit another roadblock.
So what brings you back from the brink of quitting? I think it's a good lesson to say, I'm about to quit, and then something pulls you back in, or do you feel the connection with the characters and you've got to finish the novel?
I certainly feel connection with the characters.
You don't want to leave your fans hanging?
Exactly. But just that spark, when you walk away from it for a while, at least for me, I walk away from it, and all of a sudden, I don't know why it would come to me, but it comes, some solution presents itself, and I get all excited about, wow, why didn't I think of this before? This is so great. And then it starts going again until, again, like I said, you hit the next roadblock and you're like, wow, no, this will never work. I can't do it. It won't happen.
So how do you start? Do you start by handwriting? Are you immediately fingers to keyboard and it just flows? Or is it just note-taking? Sometimes they say keep a pad and a pen on the nightstand. How do your ideas come to you?
I don't know how the ideas come, but I certainly start by writing outlines. Not that I always follow the outline. But it helps me, keep my thoughts in check, so at least I focus on what's happening in the story.
So it's back to basics. I know that, starting in language arts class and in English class and then composition writing, creative writing, they always, teachers request, start with an outline, and it seems like you stick to those fundamentals.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's amazing because you went to school for computer programming, so heavy science, heavy math focus, and then where does the writing come in?
So, yeah, I never expected growing up that I would love writing so much. But when I started, working on the book, almost immediately I just loved making these worlds come to life. I've always had a good imagination.
Okay.
But I never realized how much I actually enjoyed putting it on paper.
And then it just flowed from there.
Exactly.
And was it to your surprise that it took off and you had a fan base and books started selling? And
that's the best feeling.
It was the next one and the next one?
Exactly, yes. That was wonderful. So I love hearing feedback from fans.
Do you hear from your fans?
I do sometimes. Sometimes it's difficult to get feedback. But
Do they seek you out at the comic conventions that you attend?
Yeah, I love getting the repeat customers that come back and talk about what they liked about the books.
So we can see you at the Hartford-based comic conventions, and then there's one down at Mohegan Sun. And do you hit up all of those?
Not every convention every year, but yeah, I've been to the Hartford one, the Mohegan Sun, New York Comic Con sometimes.
Oh, you will head over to New York, okay.
Yeah, Sal and I are hoping to go there next year or the year after that. But and always the Orange Fair where I grew up.
The Orange Country Fair, so we can see you this year?
Yes, September 21st and 22nd I'll be there.
Okay, so we got the Big E. We can find you at the Orange Country Fair, and then certainly just keeping in touch with you online in your website.
Online, yeah. I have a website, owlking.com.
Owlking?
Owlking.com.
Okay, great. So these books are definitely quite a hit. So it's Ethan A. Rappaport, and we have Sal Del Greco, who does illustration, as well as Rose Faraci. And what a team.
Yes.
What a great
We
team.
have fun working on this.
All right, well, thanks for coming by the studio. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. That's Ethan A. Rappaport, fantasy novelist and comic book writer. And I'm Linda Marie Colon for Making It Artisan Stories. Thanks for watching.